Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for July 17th, 2017. Tonight we do have 4 public hearings on. Due to the fact that we probably won't have the opportunity to reach them all, we've reached out to the applicants to see if any of them wanted continuance. And is anybody here for 28 Walker Street? Walker Street? Okay, so the Walker Street matter we did discuss with the applicant, and they were willing to continue the matter to this Wednesday. We're going to have another planning board meeting in the mayor's reception room. So can we have a motion from the board to request that continuance, please?
Motion, Mr. Chairman, to move the special permit for 28 Walker Street to the July 19th planning board meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition, hearing none. So that motion carries. And again, that meeting will be in the mayor's reception room right down the hall. Thank you. Okay, moving along for the site, on the public hearings. The first matter is a site plan review and a special permit for 44-71 YMCA Drive, 2-4 Lowell Connector, -34.1 Robinson Street. The City of Lowell is seeking for approval of site plan review under Section 11.4 and a special permit under Article 12.6G of the Lowell zoning ordinance and any additional relief that is required. The applicant is proposing to construct a parking lot with 11 bus parking spaces along with associated stormwater management, landscaping, and associated utilities. The site is located in the urban mixed-use zoning district. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. For the record, Joseph Janowitz, Urban Renewal Project Manager from the Department of Planning and Development. Thank you for hearing me this evening. I want to go over a project that's a fairly small, straightforward project on its face, but in the grand scheme of things for the city is something that can help facilitate development within the Hamilton Canal District by helping assist a land exchange between the city and the national park, which is something that has been long anticipated. We'll get a little project background. Originally, the bus parking that we're to exchange with the national park was going to be slated for the garage in the Hamilton Canal District. The city thought it would be prudent to move the bus parking out of the garage because it would free up probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 spaces within the garage that were going to be necessary for the other development within the district. So in searching for properties, this property before you is presented itself. It's area right off the connector that the MBTA by and large doesn't use. So they were interested in selling it to the city. So again, this is something that we're in the process of purchasing. We're actually completing the purchase and sale with the MBTA, and we'll subsequently also close on a small piece that's owned with by National Grid. So that's both in process. MBTA should be complete, and we're still working out some details with National Grid. So again, this will facilitate part of the land exchange with the national park. So again, just to give some context, the area in red up there is where the buses currently park within the district, The area green is owned by the city, and that area that the city would obtain would make parcel 16 within the district complete. So then that way the city would be able to market that parcel for development. Just to go over some access to the site, over here, buses will come in through the Gallagher terminal after they go through the newly reconstructed overpass and widened Thorndike Street. They'll come into the Gallagher terminal, go through down where it says driveway to LRTA, go essentially pass underneath an overhead bridge associated with YMCA Drive, and then they'll access the site, which is pretty much against the connector. So once they pass through, they can access the bus parking. There's 11 parking spaces. It will be a gated entrance. That was something the National Park required. They only wanted their buses to be able to have access. We also will give access to the LRTA because they own the billboard that's right off the connector there. You might see it as you pass by. So that way they can do some maintenance, but it'll be a gated entrance that only those buses have access to. And it'll also be a gate at the exit as well. So it's a one-way flow through the site. Buses will come in on the left side of the plan that you see in front of you, and then they'll back into each of the parking spaces. And then once they're ready to leave, go pick up people at the visitor center, they'll exit off the right side. Something that we're keeping in mind as we go along is the landscaping. That's usually something very important to this board. And we want to try to mitigate the impact as much as possible on the residential condos adjacent to the property. There were originally going to be some trees that were slated to be kept out there. When there was some upgrades done to the wastewater infrastructure out there, to discover that the trees were dead, so those trees were removed. And this is the landscape plan that was put together. It's been sent out to the condo owners to get their vetting, trying to balance, being able to screen and muffle noise from any buses going into and out of the site. Also, the ability to absorb water, help with stormwater mitigation, and also plants that are salt tolerant for the winters here in New England. And in terms of the project schedule, the contractor is basically ready to go. They've actually already started to mobilize equipment from there. It's actually the same contractor that's doing the work over at South Common that you've probably seen. So they brought some of their equipment over there already to get ready for doing this project, and it'll be done this construction season. So I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Anybody here this evening want to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? Hearing none? Anybody want to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none? Any of the board members have any questions or comments? Mr. Lockhart? You have a
I
question?
don't have any questions. I would make a motion to approve the site plan.
Let's wait to see what the other boards say.
Yeah,
Okay. But,
No,
all
I
right,
don't
thank
have
you.
any.
All right,
I don't have
any of the
any
board members? Mr. Fischett, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just I want to thank Joe for clarifying. I was looking at how the parking was angled, and when you mentioned they were going to back into the spots, because it's a one-way, how are they going to get into there? So they're backing into the spots and then pulling straight out. So that's that was good to hear. That I didn't know if that was a mistake or if that was how that was designed. So that's good. The landscape screening. Did I hear you say? So you're still waiting to hear from the condo association for some input, or did you? Just so I understand what.
Yeah, we've reached out to the condo association. Again, reached out multiple times. They have not said anything negative about this landscape plan.
Okay.
One that we had put forward before them earlier, they didn't like a particular type of tree that we had proposed, so we picked something different to try to satisfy that comment. So this latest one, they haven't had any issues. So
I mean, I guess I would just add that, and it looks like really it's. You're not sparing the landscape for the buffer, because again, as you mentioned, you're trying to buffer the sound as well.
Right.
I would just ask that you continue to work if in fact there is some concern from the condo association.
Yeah, absolutely.
In finalizing that. I guess that would be how I would be looking to condition that. But
Okay.
other than that, I think it's, as you say, it's a fairly small project that opens the door for much larger things. So I think it's very positive. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Mr. Boyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What happened with the drain line?
With the what, I'm sorry?
The drain line?
Oh.
the clogged 48-inch drain.
Yeah, that was part of the first phase of this project. That was a wastewater project when this property was being investigated. They saw it as an opportunity to clear out a pretty substantially sized drain line. It takes in a bunch of stormwater from Chelmsford Street and Hale Street, and it comes through over this way. It was something that hadn't really had any attention for maybe 25 to 30 years, so they saw it as a good opportunity to do some upgrades over in this area. So they did a pretty substantial project. It was about $500,000 in upgrades over in this area to help out with the stormwater in the neighborhood.
That's great. The project itself looks very positive.
Mr. Malovich, any questions, comments?
I had only one concern with this, and it has been addressed with this landscape plan, a buffer for the residential units. And I see this as a good project.
Mr. Stetson? Excuse me.
Other than to say that, I think it's a good project for the city and facilitates, further development in the city. I have no further question about it.
Thank you. Okay, so you need a site plan vote and a special permit vote, correct?
Correct.
What's the request of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the site plan as presented with one condition that the applicant continue to work with the condominium association in working out that landscape plan.
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
A motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries 5-4 and none against. So now we need a motion for the special permit.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for the approving of the special permit being requested for this project with the same condition that was attached to the site plan review, which would be to continue to work with the condo development and finalizing the landscaping plan.
I'll second the motion.
The motion made and second, okay. Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, the site plan and special permit both are approved, 5-4 and none against. Good luck. Wish you well.
Thank you very much for your support.
That's a long time coming up project. Excuse me.
Okay, moving along on the agenda, the next matter is a special permit and site plan review. This is at 585, 591, 605, 6091, 619, 629 Market Street, 616, 628, 636, 646, 650, 666 Merrimack Street, and 23 Cabot Street. The applicant proposes to construct a 163-unit privately developed and operated dormitory. The proposed project is located in the UMU, which is the Urban Mixed Zoning District. The project requires site plan approval, excuse me, under section 11.4 and 7.8, and special permit under 11.3 and under Article 12, the table of uses. This matter was before us back on June 5th. We heard from the development and their attorneys, as well as staff comments and traffic comments. We did speak with, we had several people in the neighborhood come out and speak in regards to traffic concerns. The matter was continued due to the fact that we did not have the security plan that hadn't been submitted, which has to be so on our site plan review, and also for the applicant and the city planning staff to try to refine some of the questions due to the fact that we got them, I think, some of the questions and responses we received 10 minutes before the previous meeting. So saying that, I'll turn it over to the applicant at this point in time.
Chairman, George Theodoro, 133 Market Street, representing the applicant, WFI Investment. With me here tonight is also an attorney and part of the team, Howard Levin from Rich May Associates. We also have Steve Simonelli, who is an architect with J. Davis, And we also have the engineer, Robert Clark from Allen Major Engineering. Also, of course, here is the principal applicant, Mr. Fideli, and Mr. Dan Thorne, who works closely with Mr. Fideli. It is correct in stating, Mr. Chairman, that last time that we were here, we went over the plan, the site plan, and there were primarily two issues that were left. And one was the number of comments that we received from the Planning and Development Office. As a result of that, we met with Planning and Development. We answered those comments and provided copies to those answers to DPD and to the Planning Board staff on, I believe, July 14th. That was done. And in addition to that, one of the major issues that was presented was parking. In meetings that we had with DPD and the administration, it was discussed that in order to solve this parking problem, that we would provide, number one, 93 spaces on site, which we have done. That we would also come up with another 100 spaces, that being 50 spaces that we received today in the letter from the city, in which we were granted 50 spaces of public parking in the AOC garage. Also, we are able to represent that we have 50 spaces off-site. We believe that we have complied with the requirements of the transportation engineer for the city of Lowell in his recommendation, and that there is also a very interesting development, part of this development that is looking to be developed here to enhance the neighborhood and also to assist our residents and the students in safely commuting to the university, and that is the contribution that we would make to the multimodal Decatur Avenue. That being said, what I would like to do is turn this over for any questions that the board would have. We have the engineer and the architects here to answer those questions. And I might say that this development project with the city, we are anticipating that this would have a tremendous benefit for the neighborhood. A tremendous benefit also to the tax base of the city, in which the city would be looking to gain revenue over the next 10 years in the approximate amount of $2.5 million. So that being said, I'd like to turn it over to the board for any questions that you may have.
Okay. First of all, I did receive one letter, the people who can't be here, and this is from the, let's see, Neighborhood Council. This was indicated from the Lowell Citywide Neighborhood Council as the president with the MME page. We always support neighborhoods' wishes and support zoning ordinances in place. No ordinance should have a variance unless it shows hardship and does not, unless it shows hardship, and this does not. Also, the students and citizens have the right to have safety and feel secure, which means that they must have 24 hours and they must follow the same rules and guidelines of all students attending UMass Lowell and their standard of conduct. Please let me know if there's going to be any further help. This is by Deb Fagoni from the Neighborhood Associations. Okay. So at this point in time, since it's a public hearing, I'm going to open up the public hearing to anybody. I know we had several people who spoke in opposition last time. Anybody at this time wants to speak in opposition? Just come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Christopher Natali. I own a building at 586 Merrimack, which be adjacent to this project. I spoke last meeting about some of the objections I have with respect to parking. I've had, 3 weeks to think about it, and I actually came up with a list of some more issues which I'd like to present to the board. I just had a question for the development team. It's 163 units. How many beds?
466.
466. That is
They put in the application unless they've changed
Yeah,
that. But
Okay. Is the 466 beds, is that beds short for bedrooms, or is that how many single beds?
160 rooms, 466 beds.
460, okay,
They
very
need
good.
233 parking.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Only submitted, they had 93.
Good. Okay, that was my
Requesting
question.
waivers.
I don't know if any of the board members are familiar with what's going on in Boston called hotbedding.
What?
Hotbedding is a term, it's, my daughter's 26, she was going to school in Emmanuel College, and there were some real problems in Boston where this hotbedding was taking place. What hotbedding is, a developer or property owner will buy a three-bedroom condo or apartment, and they'll double it up with 2 kids per bedroom. That was why I asked the question. What that does is it creates a tremendous strain on the fire department, and then with all the cars, a lot of the fire trucks can't make their turns, okay? So that's just one point I'd like to bring up. In college, when I went to college, I lived in the Fort Fox dormitory at Lowell. That's when it was called Lowell, not UMass Lowell. I was an RA and we're actually a 4-count, so in the dorm at that period of time, and I lived on the 10th floor, the 12th floor, and the 17th floor, 18th floor, excuse me. I was responsible for 12 dormitory rooms. One of the concerns that I have is that during that 3-year period I lived in the dorm, there was one fellow who wanted to commit suicide. I stayed up with him all night long. He was a wrestler, strong guy, but he was falling apart. I stayed up with him all night long to make sure he wasn't going to kill himself, which he was planning on doing. I've also stopped people from throwing beer bottles out the window and skyrockets, you know, all kinds of blow-dart guns off of people's basketball on the head, shooting blow-dart guns. I know the plan called for employees to handle this. I think that the UMass Lowell has the right model where a student handles each floor, and there's an RA that's for every 6 or 7 floor counselors. And that model where a student has an opportunity to supervise and coach and mentor the younger kids, and they're 17 or 18 years old, it's better to hear it from one of their colleagues than an employee. So I think that needs to be looked at with this project or as any other private dorm project. You know, I think the university has it right, and with that ratio. Okay. I've been spending money in Lowell since I graduated college in 1983. I started buying 2-family houses and fixing them up. Each of those projects I did the work myself. Even today, I'm a hands-on guy, inside dumpsters and working hard. But I can say, so I have I'm committed to Lowell. I don't own any properties in any other town other than Lowell, other than where I live. The lack of retail, I think, is the wrong solution for this area. We have an opportunity in Lowell to get this right. You know, the downtown Lowell has plenty of retail and it fails because of the lack of parking. I had mentioned in my comments last week that if this project had a 2- or 3-story parking garage, kind of like at Leahy Clinic in Burlington, where there's a parking garage and you can park, and then live space could be up above, this would really work for the neighborhood, it would work for the kids who live there, and it would also really work for retail, and retail has twice the tax revenue that residential has. So I think this project should look at how we can, you know, we have one chance to get it right. It's not a pre-existing building. So I guess I urge the board to think about, and the developing team to see how they could get retail on the first floor. One solution that I have, here's some free ideas. On Cabot Street, across from Charlie's Bar and Grill, you could have a ramp. You turn in, you go up a ramp, and you go up to 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor, and then you could have retail that lines Market Street and retail that lines Merrimack Street, and then the people who live up in the apartments above or the dorms above are able to work at these retail spaces, and the different people who live in all the housing projects could have jobs and work in these retail spaces. And the students who live there could be a very viable retail space. So that's my comment on retail. There were some comments made in the hall last week that a parking garage solution doesn't work. Well, if it doesn't work, then maybe, maybe there's a different development team that should take on the project. On the Perkins Place development project, it was a pre-existing mill building, and the board, or this board, or different members of the board required that development team, I think it was Ed Walsh's son, Ed Jr., who passed away, and his partner, I can't recall his name, they built a parking garage, and were happy to build a parking garage, and that parking garage was able to give parking spaces for all the residents. There was another comment that was made about, some figure of how many students are going to have cars. Well, I grew up in Burlington. I rode my motorcycle to UO in the rain and the snow, and then when I lived in the dorm, pretty much everybody had a car. And people who go to UO are hardworking Americans who work, and they might have a side job. They're going to go home on weekends, whatever. So parking needs to be addressed, and I urge the board to, that letter, meet the ZBA requirements and the zoning ordinance. There's a lot of people who put that zoning ordinance together, and there are a lot of smart people, and they gave some good thought to what the number of spaces are required. I don't think we should deviate from it, particularly since we have an opportunity to have a clean slate. And then, I think the other comment about not being cost-effective, my 26-year-old daughter who just graduated, she lives in one of my buildings on Market Street, and she parks in the street, and I pay her parking tickets once a month. She doesn't even know, okay? I sneak over here to the treasurer's office, and how much does my daughter owe this month? I have a blank check, and I swear I'm cutting checks for $135, $160 a month. Now, it'd be better if she just paid her bill, but she doesn't. But if the dad can afford to pay the $160, and the dads and mothers can afford to pay these kids rent, they can pay to have a parking space. Not to mention, if there's a parking garage, all those people in the projects would have more places to park. So I think it really could be viable. So I urge the development team to look at that. I think it can be a moneymaker. And then another concern I have, I'm sorry, I'm only one more page left, is market demand. I know the team says that there was a market demand. Well, the UMass Lowell expert, Larry Siegel, stated what the demand is, and the growth that UMass Lowell has experienced in the recent years, that's not going to continue. And I think if he speaks here today, you could ask him. But any business, they say the worst way to fail a business is to grow too quick. Same with the university. So if the university grows too quick, they're not going to pump out the great engineers that they had in the past, and the reputation is going to go downhill. So I think we need to listen to what he has to say about parking. I can only say that, my circle of friends and family, I have 6 sisters, and they all have kids, and 3 or 4 kids, and they're all in college. They all have cars. And Uncle Chris bought them, one of my nieces a car. So, and then my other nephew, I bought a car, a little crappy car. So that's in my own circle, but I think that data point needs to be considered. What is the real, how many kids, what kind of car rate do kids have? Back to the market demand. I own a property at 25 Bowers Street, which is adjacent to where St. Joseph's Hospital used to be, where the UMass Lowell parking lot is. And the city, UMass Lowell, whatever, changed it from a one-way street, and then it was very difficult to rent that apartment. So if we put any more burden on the street, all the surrounding houses and buildings and properties are going to be undermined because you can't rent them. And I'm going to tell you, I don't lie, but I had an apartment, I have 2-family house, and they moved out in May, the college kids, and I try to keep college kids with college kids and families with families and professional people with professional people. So I'm not going to mix them up and have people unhappy with each other. That apartment's sitting empty for all the rest of May, June, July, and I finally told my wife the other day, let's just rent it for September. That was like 4.5 months I'm going to lose. I have over 50 apartments. No vacancies, but I have 2 there. So I have firsthand knowledge that the market isn't as strong as I think they think it is. And that's a great location. I can hit a tennis ball from my back of my building into school property. Back on the market demand, I have a couple different architects and have some projects in the works. One of my architects informed me that this one architect has designed and developed 2 private other dormitory projects in the city, I'm not going to mention those locations or the developer, but I will tell you with all certainty, he developed 2 private condos that are in the planning stages that are designed, and both of those private projects do meet all the parking requirements. And I will say this, one location I could hit a tennis ball to. I'm only an average tennis player, but I can get a tennis ball to one location, one campus. And the other site that the same architects developed, I could hit a golf ball, and I'm a lousy golfer, but I could get a golf ball to that campus. So that's how close it is. So that's a better location. Those go online. This project's going to have to be converted to market rate, or market housing, or families, or whatever. And in the late 80s, I took a pounding when all of the condominiums were built in Drake. So everybody moved out of my buildings in Lowell, so I had to lower my rents. The same thing is very likely to happen here, so I think the board needs to consider, if this failed as a dormitory based on other demands, or maybe the speculation is incorrect, and maybe the man from UMass Lowell is correct on how fast they're going to grow, and it gets converted from dormitory use to plain old residential use, what kind of impact does that have on the parking? And I'd like to ask the board to figure that out, because the parking should probably be on worst case scenario. Okay, I'm almost done, I'm sorry. Just today, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I heard there's a third private dormitory project that's in some form on the planning boards, and that one is smack dab between both north and south. And the developer is scared of what the market demands are. But that, again, has a better location, far better location than either of these. This particular project on Merrimack, and I own 586 Merrimack, so I'm not trying to slam the neighborhood, but it is much further from the university's campus than these other 3 sites. Decatur Street. In the wintertime, I own a Bobcat, and I plow every one of my buildings single-handedly, and I enjoy it. And I plow the streets and neighbors who are boxed in. So I run my Bobcat right down next to Decatur Street, and that street's never plowed. I don't plow it because I don't go down that way, but I don't know who's going to plow it, if that burden's going to be put on the city or the property owners who have adjacent properties on Decatur Street. But my daughter, I wouldn't want her walking down Decatur Street on this multimodal transportation. It's that's the acre, that's the worst section of Lowell, and that, I know a lot of people have been working hard to make that area better, but at nighttime, that's a scary street. So I don't know if we need to put lighting there, or who's going to pay for the lighting. And then, if my daughter went there, I wouldn't have her walking down that street if I'm going to pay for her education, so I'd have her walk down Merrimack Street. Now, I own another property at 785 Merrimack Street, and from there I park my Bobcat and I hit all my other properties in Lowell, and I do it all day long. And I hit the sidewalks last on all my properties. I get all my parking lots done first, and then I go back and I get my sidewalk. And I try to be a gentleman and hit all my neighbors. And I try to drive from property to property. My friend Brian McGowan, he owns the church down the street. I always try to get his sidewalk before I even get my own. But I will say this, that Merrimack Street going up towards the university, the snowbanks get so thick. I do have this Bobcat. You can't hit it with a snowbank. It just gets packed. And I got to put my Bobcat at a 90-degree angle and back scrape all the snow off. So if people are going to be using Merrimack Street to walk up to class, it's going to put a danger hazard there, because they're going to be walking on the street, and the street gets crushed in with the snow. And to rely on the people of each property to do it, that's fine and good, but a lot of people don't do it, or they do it late like I do, and I'm a pretty responsible guy. Okay, last but not least, sorry it took me so long. Back to the parking, we have an opportunity to get it right, and I just urge the development team to think about putting 2-tier, 3-tier parking and build your units on top. But in closing to the board, I'd like to urge the board to deny this project and require that this project meet all of the parking and zoning requirements, since it's a brand-new project. And it also, as I mentioned, would like to see if the board could analyze what the requirements would be if it was used in a different fashion, so that the parking requirements are based on that. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Maxine Farkas. I am currently the resident manager at Western Avenue Lofts, and back in the time when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I got an undergraduate degree in land use planning. Since I came before you last on this matter, I've had the opportunity to spend a little time looking at this project and wish to make some additional comments. When I was an undergrad in the early 70s, Jane Jacobs' Life and Death of the Great American Cities was required reading that shaped my understanding of what makes a healthy, viable neighborhood. One thing that has stuck with me over the years is one of her comments on the street, which I offer for your consideration. Jacobs said, "There must be eyes upon the street, eyes belonging to those who we might call the natural proprietors of the street. The buildings on a street equipped to handle strangers and to ensure the safety of both residents and strangers must be oriented to the street. They cannot turn their backs or blank sides on it and leave it blind." Looking at the elevations provided of the project, it is pretty clear that this 6-story monolith is indeed leaving Cabot and Market Streets blind. In the narrative, the developer pays lip service to many of the plans for this area, but fails to show a meaningful understanding of the needs of the neighborhood. The open spaces provided for this project are above the street and inaccessible to the public. When I call the proposed project a monolith, that is exactly what it is. With the majority of housing in the neighborhood 3 stories or less, this project doesn't acknowledge the character of the area. Place a 6-story building with 466 residents across from the Archambault Towers and North Common Village, and density in the neighborhood will skyrocket. Looking at block data from the 2010 census, I mapped out an area approximately 1/10 of a square mile, a couple blocks in every direction, and did a little calculation that indicated that population density in that area in 2010, not counting St. Joe's, not counting Unity Place, was the equivalent of 21,000 people per square mile. While the population density of the whole is approximately 8,000 people per square mile. The calculation didn't, well, let me add in this proposed project, and density hits approximately 26,000 persons per square mile, which means that this portion of the acre is going to beat back Central, who only has 23,600 persons per square mile. And this is not a distinction that the acre really wants. Once you start looking at density, you start moving to look at parking. The developer contends that the lack of parking provided in this project will result in fewer parking spaces needed, and on several occasions has referred to their private dorm in Durham, New Hampshire as an example. Using Google Earth, I looked at the location of that project. Indeed, there is no parking visible at that project right by the university. However, a strip mall with a Hannaford's and a Rite Aid and a number of other businesses is 250 feet behind that dorm. So, as far as I can tell, yes, this particular project did not have appreciable parking, but every other address listed on their website has got parking lots around every building. Just for context, the Market Basket on Broadway is approximately half a mile away. The CVS on Merrimack is also about a little over a half a mile away. And one thing I learned from spending 20 years carless in Boston is that one locates such essentials, when one locates, those essentials are usually less than a half a mile from home because you've got to lug stuff back and forth. While the developer has glossed over proximity to lifestyle maintenance necessities such as groceries, drugstore, etc., this is a real problem that is faced every day by residents of the area, and one that will not, as the developer claims, be resolved by students buying groceries from Peapod. A study done by the university found that despite best efforts to control vehicles on campus by raising parking costs, 45% of residential students bring a car to school. This is a baseline that should be used to figure the number of parking spaces this developer should be required to provide. While looking at the neighborhood, I looked across the canal at University Suites, which was built by the university. University Suites has 472 beds. This project has 466 beds. University Suites is on approximately 72,000 square foot lot. This project is on approximately 57,000 square foot. University Suites have access, residents have access to the 630 space East Campus garage, as well as the 141 space Perkins Street lot right next to the building. This project proposes 93, and they expect that if they have 50 spaces at the AOT, the kids are going to walk almost a half a mile to go back and forth to their cars, which we know from experience in the acre does not happen. University Suites has 1 RA for every 36 students. This project proposes 1 RA for every 125 students. University Suites has 25,000 square feet of open space that is visible from the street and open to the public. This project has interior open space that is not visible nor accessible to the public. Why would this city not require a potential private dorm developer to meet the same basic standards that are employed by the university? The application suggests that Decatur Way is a multimodal transportation option for residents of the project. The Acre Coalition to Improve Our Neighborhood spent 5 years working to transform Decatur Way from a druggie-infested hideout to an outdoor art gallery and community space for the residents of buildings that back onto that space. It was never intended to be a bike path for UML students. Decatur Way is a safe space where kids can play without worrying about traffic of any kind. The developer has implied that residents of the acre are resistant to change. For the past 7 years, Action has been working on recreating our neighborhood one project at a time. And the change we embrace isn't just neighborhood group whim. It is firmly grounded in numerous studies and reports, in addition to a basic sensitivity to neighborhood desires, rather than the reliance on broad interpretations of one report exhibited by this application. It is not that we are resistant to change, but rather that we prefer change that is thoughtful and which is based on a clear understanding of the needs and the desires of neighborhood residents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak in opposition?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Dave Willett, president and founder of Action, the Acre Neighborhood Group. I'm here to speak in opposition. Quite a few different reasons. One is basically the parking for our neighborhood and the integrity of our neighborhood, the way it's sitting right now. if I have 466 students just walking in a neighborhood between 4:30 to 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, I'm sure you guys have meetings here, you see what the traffic looks like on Merrimack Street. So even if it was just people walking, that will be an immense detriment to just that area, just because people will walk not just in the crosswalks, they won't be waiting for the lights. I already see it all the time. So just adding 466 more people to that area will be incredible. Then I look at the plans, and in the front, there's no pullover, no pickup areas in front of the building. So it's college students. So anytime that they order pizza, they have any deliveries, they just dropping somebody up, picking somebody up. Once that car stops, it's just going to back up that whole area again. It's not designed with the thought of our neighborhood in it. The other thing I understand is they're talking about the church, the Transfiguration Church, for private parking. So if you're looking at that, according to the plans, private parkings require it to be 400 feet away. As the crow flies, that's 583 feet away, so they're looking for a variance to their variance. The front door to each is 1,224 feet, so you're telling me that somebody's going to walk out the front door of that building and walk 1,224 feet just to get across from Cody's Market to go pick up their car. And the other one, too, is the Ayotte Garage. It's supposed to be a 1,500-foot thing. If you measure it on the thing, it's 1,613 feet as the crow flies. So again, a variance to the variance. And the number of loading spaces is required 3. There's only 1 provided. In other words, it's still going to cause problems on the street for people going by. There's just definitely not enough parking on the site by choice of the developer. It's not a hardship. It's a choice of the developer not to put it in. They should be required, like everybody else, to put in the correct amount. What about snow storage? Where is it? Another point in the snow parking bans. This is New England. We have parking bans probably 5 or 6 through the course of the winter. If they're taking up the spots at the Ayotte and other spots, and you have all these other cars, where are those cars supposed to go? The neighborhood depends on having these open lots, so when there is a parking ban put in by Superintendent Taylor, that we do have a place to put our cars. And then the other answer is, well, the thing that you'll have to do is you'll have to change it to a residential-only parking, so that way our kids do not take the spot on the streets. Well, this is our neighborhood. Right now, it's like a neighborhood. If I have people coming to visit, there's a spot on them for them to park. If there's a place of business, there's a spot that they can go and park. If they want to go out to eat in the neighborhood, there's a spot for them to park. Once you do this and you make everything parking meters and everything residential-only parking, where's the neighborhood going to park? We just lost the integrity of our neighborhood, and it's not fair to the residents, to the police, and to the parking department to ticket their problem away. This is our neighborhood. It shouldn't be there to be able to be ticketed away so that they don't have to put in the proper parking. The building green space inside, you see it and they show it and they glorify that it's green space and everything else. That's only on the bottom floor and the first floor, and that basic reason why that's there is only to meet the candlelight, the 51 candlelight requirement to add lights to the room. It's all a silo. They show it on each floor like it's still there, but it's always just on the first floor, and that's only so they can build it around like this so they can add more density to their buildings. The green space is just makes it look pretty on the drawings. Making Cabot Street and Market Street a scary place to the neighborhood, feeling crime and drugs will return to this area. So if you look at the, especially the Market Street side, Lowell Housing is on one side with that wall across the street from used to be the White Eagle till they took that down too, is that wall right there. On this side, you're gonna have 6 stories. So if you're walking down, just picture it, you're walking down from Cody's Market, it's probably 8:30 at night, you're walking down Market Street, you're walking with your girlfriend, you're walking as a college kid, and you wanna go to downtown. All of a sudden, you're gonna look down there, and you're gonna say, this is not inviting. It's not what should be there. Like Maxine said, the eyes are not on the neighborhood. It's not a friendly spot. You will definitely take a left onto Cabot to go down Merrimack. So we just cut off one of our throughways to downtown by putting this in. There's about 1,500 new beds opening in September with between UMass Lowell and the Edge and private developers. So I want to know 2 years from now, where are they going to find 466 more students to fill their rooms? Most of it right here, I believe there's 55 4-bedrooms, 36 3s, 66 2s, and 5 1-bedrooms. Well, if it doesn't work as a student dorm, what are we going to end up with 55 4-bedroom units? How are we going to fill those? That means lots of families with lots of cars. And so we need to really think this through. If it's not going to be a dorm, what recourse do we have 2, 3, 4 years from now when it's not? We can't go back and redo this now. The time is now to have them put in their correct parking for the neighborhood. That's that. RAs. The RAs, 1 for 40 is, there should be 12 living on site. They want 1 for every 125. Student housing has a history of having problems of drug and alcohol issues. The RAs are trained in student issues. They're trained in Narcan and health matters if a student is having a problem. They're trained in student living and stress and suicide prevention. They try to brush it off saying that they will have adult employees, their maintenance man, and their janitors be the people, because they said, well, they're adults. Would you rather have a kid do it, or would you rather have adult? Well, I would rather have the kid that's trained, that's living there 24 hours a day, and it's his job that he'll know the person who's behind that door. He'll know the people that are having an issue. He won't just be the janitor in there. And I have another problem, too, because if you're a janitor plunging a clogged toilet and hearing a ruckus, or there's too much noise in the hallway, and you're in the middle of doing that, you're gonna run out with your plunger full of poopies and toilet paper and tell a college student what to do, and you think they'll actually listen to you? I mean, just picture it. I said that purposely so you'll get a visual. How is a janitor gonna tell a student how to quiet down? It won't work. RAs are trained in these issues. RAs are what keeps order in all the dorms. This city has not ever opened a private dorm like this yet. Let's not get lax on the rules that we make every other dorm follow. This is not a hardship. There is no hardship here. It doesn't need a variance. It's only a money issue that WFI does not want to spend the money that they need to make this a quality product for our neighborhood. The Edge is coming online in September. Can we wait to see what goes on there? The Edge, their 1 bedrooms are sold out. Lots of problems, though, renting their 3 bedrooms. They're kind of getting stuck on that. The Edge has a parking variance and has no parking variance. As a matter of fact, they came before, and their problem with the city was that if they do not get all their parking spaces, the Edge said that their project would not work unless if they have the parking spaces required. That was to open that dormitory. All of a sudden, in this dormitory, we don't have cars. We don't need the parking spots. With over 1,500 beds opening up this year, we are going to find the 466 students. If not dorms, what will we be left with in the acre? That is our main concern. The other one is the Decatur, they call it Ave, but it's Decatur Way. It was a 5-year project we started as Action years ago. It was full of trees. We had to go in there and literally cut down trees. Halfway up, we found mattresses with over 70, 80 needles. There was a shooting gallery in there. We worked for 5 years to turn that into the beautiful walkway that it is. It's called Decatur Way, Water, Art, and You. That's what it's there for. And it was a lot of partners. That's UMass Lowell, the City of Lowell, Action, the CBA, you go on and on with all the groups, Harmon's Paint, Youth Build America, Habitat for Humanity. Over 43 groups worked together to make this a beautiful outside poetry and art gallery. Lowell High School's 2016 art project is proudly hanging there. Lowell High School thought it was enough for their students to come over and design this whole panel just to put in that walkway. All 26 schools in the city of Lowell designed and put art in that walkway. I had pallets of wood made. I had it cut by Youth Build America, and I handed it out to all the city schools. They came back with beautiful artwork. We have artwork from the Greek schools, the Portuguese schools, the Spanish schools, every other part of the community. It's made to be a beautiful art and poetry walkway. Mothers from House of Hope, they walk their children down there. There's people having cookouts there now when we talk because we made it such a beautiful place. That's our Decatur Way. It's about the neighborhood and it's for the neighborhood. We only have this one chance to do this right. This is our acre. The people who live here and work here that love our neighborhood do not see this being a productive part of our community without the required parking and RAs on site. Without WFI seriously being part of our community, and by the way, this is not Durham, New Hampshire. This is our acre. I respectfully ask you to deny this project till they design it to fit our neighborhood seamlessly with no loose threads. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. I believe Larry Siegel, our Associate Vice Chancellor, submitted a letter last week that you may have received.
Yes, we did.
If you haven't, I have copies for you.
Okay. Yep, we did receive it. I believe all board members, I believe, have a copy. Is that correct?
Has the proponent
Yep.
received a copy?
Dated 7/14. Correct.
All right. My name is Adam Bakey. I'm the Director of Campus Planning for UMass Lowell. Here to speak on behalf of the university. And Larry Siegel sends his apologies that he was unable to come this evening. He had a pre-scheduled vacation, which I guess we should allow him to take. I will not read everything that's in the letter because I think many of the neighborhood residents spoke very eloquently on a number of the same topics, and don't need to belabor those points other than to say that generally speaking we agree with many of them. However, there are a couple of points that we do feel are appropriate for the university to comment on. First of all, the planning board, I think, very wisely recognized that there would be an interest when people are considering private dormitories that the transportation needs of those private dormitories might be a little bit different than conventional apartment buildings, and wisely considered the possibility that developers could be asked to submit comprehensive transportation demand management plans to address how their particular student residents in those cases their transportation needs would be addressed. To our knowledge, this developer so far has been unwilling to do that and has argued that they don't need to because one building of our East Campus is used for research purposes and happens to be just within 2,000 feet as the crow flies. We just want to clarify that that building, the Ames Research Building, is a very narrowly tailored, very specific research building that is rarely frequented by students. No classes are taught in that building. And it's also important to recognize that the zoning's actual definition of a campus building, which would allow for the lack of a need for considering transportation demand management, is a building that is primarily used for teaching classes and or research, is adjacent to other such academic buildings, is located on the contiguous campuses, and does not include student housing or sports and recreation facilities. The Ames building is not adjacent to any other academic buildings, and the rest of the East Campus is used for residential, recreational, and administrative purposes. So we don't believe that meets the technical definition, but I think more importantly, the reason that the City Council and the Planning Board thought that should belong in the regulations is because it's a way to define the kind of academic campus, which is what the residents of a student dormitory, be it public or private, are attempting to connect with. And the Ames building is really not where any students are attempting to connect with. The nearest area of campus that really meets the spirit as well as the technical definition is really the North Campus on the other side of the river, and that is considerably more than 2,000 feet away. I think it's also really, this point around supervision is really not one to gloss over. And in fact, the university's really greatest concern about this project and some of the sort of movement toward private dormitories as opposed to just conventional off-campus apartments is that it creates the impression that they will be similar to on-campus dormitories. And one of the real sort of significant characteristics of on-campus dormitories is the very high level of highly trained supervision that students who live in those dormitories have. And I think it's frankly we would consider insufficient minimum ratio of 1 RA for every 50 students, but the idea that a property manager, maintenance staff, or housekeepers might be considered when calculating the ratio to get yourself under is really, frankly, rather somewhat preposterous when you think about the role, the very important role that those RAs play in protecting the safety of the residents of the dormitory, but also minimizing the impacts that those residents in large concentrations have on their surroundings. We also are really questioning, for similar reasons, the idea of waiving the requirement for an on-campus or an on-site security guard, especially given with the argument that the sort of technical systems that are being provided, security cameras and so forth, are a sufficient alternative. The university invests tremendous resources in technical equipment to ensure and support the safety and security of our on-campus buildings, including our dormitories. We have all sorts of cameras and other electronic equipment, but our police department basically recognizes that you can't the safety lighting and monitored security cameras and so forth only go so far if you don't have humans present who are able to immediately respond to what is detected by those devices. And that's an absolutely essential part of the process. So on campus in our dormitories, we do ensure that there are people trained and prepared to respond if there is an issue. And that's really, I think, looking at what the City Council and the Planning Board presumably had in mind when you enacted that minimum standard as well. I think it was very wise, and I think it would be something you would be wise to hold them to. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion here around parking. I think we also share the concern that there is probably not sufficient parking provided, and the off-site locations that were suggested this evening are frankly unlikely to be well used by students. In our experience, students do need to be, the parking needs to be in fairly close proximity to where the property that they serve for students to find that convenient. I think for better or worse, students are likely to seek out their own alternatives if that's where they're assigned to park. Just as a point of reference, approximately 40% of our on-campus dormitory resident students do bring cars to campus. So that, I think, is the minimum. If you look at the numbers for upper class students, it goes up considerably. And if you look at the numbers for off-campus students, it goes up to a little over 60%. So I think those should be points of reference as the Planning Board considers what is really the actual parking demand that will be present with the project of this nature. And then finally, I think the question of demand is actually a really important one. Our projections suggest that the demand for off-campus housing relative to what exists and it was occupied during the past academic year is that there will be about 400 or so additional beds using some pretty generous assumptions about what that demand might be. In fact, the university only intends to grow its population or its enrollment by about 1,000 additional students between now and 2020 and does anticipate plateauing at that point. There are some very strong market forces in play in terms of the number of college-age students in New England and in Massachusetts that would make it very difficult for us to grow much beyond that without significantly lowering our standards, which is not something we wish to do. So if you consider the proportion of that increased demand that also happens to include online and continuing education students as well as PhD students and others who are very unlikely, frankly, to want to live in any kind of dormitory on or off campus, the idea that there would be 400 looking to live in this type of an off-campus dormitory is maybe about right, but let's say it's actually 50% off and it's 600. Well, the first 400 of those are going to be presumably met by the EDGE project, which is opening this fall. So beyond that, it's really unclear where the source of demand for a property of this nature actually is likely to be. And I think the reason that, frankly, that's for the developer to determine. They're the ones taking the financial risk with a project of this nature, and if they feel confident in the demand, well, I suppose good for them. But I think the planning board needs to think carefully about that topic and the question of demand because of what many of the residents raised as a concern, which is what happens if they don't fill with students? And I think there is at least a reasonable chance, and I think based on what I understand, the developer has been unwilling to say they will only lease to students, but there seems to be at least a reasonable chance, if not a pretty significant chance, that there will be non-students living in the property. That raises a bit of a concern from our point of view, again, around issues of safety for the residents and for the student residents and what sort of that will create. But from the planning board's point of view, I think it speaks to how you should be permitting this project and what you should be considering this project in terms of what's before you. If it were being submitted as merely an apartment building, it would have a different set of requirements in your zoning that you would need to be considering. And because it is likely that this property will be, at least in part, an apartment building, even an apartment building catering to students, you need to think about, I think, those standards which differ with respect to parking, with respect to usable open space, and a number of lot area per dwelling unit, and a number of other standards that the developer has the opportunity to bypass if they wish to consider it a dormitory. But in order to consider it a dormitory, they really need to honor at least the minimum performance standards for a dormitory that the council and the planning board have wisely established. So I think you should consider that and use your good judgment as to how to best handle that issue. And I thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have at the university as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in opposition?
My name is Steve Severson. I'm a resident of the Acre. And I would like to go on the record as opposing this project for all of the reasons that Chris and Dave and Maxine and Adam have already pointed out. I don't need to add any more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am James Sarantakis and resident of the Acre as well. And I oppose this plan because of the fact I live in the Acre and across the street from this building here they're going to be putting up. I see more of a problem putting this building up, causing more problems with crime and everything else. See, I don't agree with this at all. At all, not at 100%. Plus, I'm handicapped, and all we need is, jobs for the handicapped people, and you're going to be sticking other people in here. How about when those people that are going to be living in your place, they're going to be taking our jobs, because I can't find a job right now. I'm looking for work, and what's going to happen? All the people that are going to be living in your place are going to be taking the neighborhood jobs. That's what's going to be happening here. You're not thinking about the neighborhood, you're thinking about yourselves, unfortunately. So I am opposed to this plan, and that's about it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Frechette. I'd like to speak in opposition to this project. 7 years ago, I approached Dave Willett to create the action group as a voice for the neighborhood with the specific intent that they would be able to share the needs of the residents with the city and with other nonprofits in the area. And I think that David and the group has done admirably. And I believe that tonight what we see before us is not something that we thought of 7 years ago, nor something that we want to see today. We've always been concerned about the low-income residents that live in the neighborhood. We've sought through CBA, where I worked before, and through Action, to ensure that their needs, what was important to them, were met as we went forward. And I can't help but believe what's before us tonight, the lack of parking, the lack of supervision, the suggested off-site parking, none of that rings true, both as an adult, who I certainly wouldn't walk that far away, and even as a student. So I ask you, on behalf of the Acre residents, of which I was once, living in North Common, I ask you to not grant the variances tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angela Papandreou. I was not going to speak here tonight, but I feel I have to voice my opinion. I'm opposing this project. I've lived in the Acre for over 60 years. I live on Bauer Street, which has been heavily impacted with the dormitories and the college students. I have watched the Acre changed, and not in a positive way, since I was a little girl. I have seen beautiful homes on Mount Vernon Street that had lovely gardens, plop houses in the middle of them. It's become to me a concrete city. I walk those streets every day, walking my little grand dog, and I watch everything, and to me it's deteriorating. The Acre, to me, was a beautiful place. I still love it. I live there. I own property there that I've inherited from my parents. We owned the Bauer House brick building across the street from us at one point that's now really filled with college students. In the fall, they party, which you want kids to have fun, but I actually get traumatized because I hear them walking up and down the streets, going from house to house, party to party, dropping bottles here and there, trash here and there, and a lot of other things I don't even want to discuss. To me, this project just means I'm going to have to worry about 400 more kids in the area. And that's, I find, troublesome, not just for the residents, but for the students themselves. I've tried to keep an open mind. I try to work with the students, but it's very difficult sometimes. The city had a chance many years ago to make ordinances and not allow a lot of these beautiful homes to deteriorate, become concrete city, no grass, and you overlooked it. You made a mistake a long time ago. Please don't make a mistake right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, at this point in time, I'll turn it over to board members. Anybody have any questions?
I got a couple.
Okay, I'll start with Mr. Lockhart, if you don't mind.
I'd like to focus my question on the parking. I know we have a letter here today that is granted, it's dated July 17th, from Nicholas Naven, allocating 50 more spaces, and I'm not sure, it says a garage.
That is correct, Mr. Lockhart.
I'd just like to be brought up to date with the number of spaces you have available and what's required. It's just, you know, a little...
We have on site 93 spaces.
Right.
We have 50 spaces that are granted to us, city spaces granted to us from this letter today from Nicholas Naven. And also we are in negotiations, or we have a memorandum of understanding for an additional, at a minimum of 50 spaces, which would give us 193 spaces, which would be 40 short of the 233 spaces required.
I did read that, okay. Where are these located?
They're located approximately 600 feet down Market Street, which becomes Salem Street. It's a rear parking lot of the Transfiguration Church.
Oh, all right, and there's some on the street somewhere, right?
It's an off-street parking lot, which is fenced in and striped.
Right.
And it's just a few minutes walking distance from the site of the proposed dormitory. And from there, it's probably about a 4 or 5 minute walk to the university crossing.
Yeah, church over there. Okay. Thank you. The other question I have relating to parking and the number of cars that may populate this site, maybe Nick, you can expand on this too. I'm just wondering, this multimodal infrastructure project improvement that it's mentioned in various memos here in the packet we have. When you really promote something like that, what kind of an impact does it have on parking and traffic? Is there any data available anywhere where this has really worked and impacted those things that you can recite? Is there any history to this?
Yes, sir. Your question about specific studies, I cannot recite any off the top of my head. However, I can tell you that in the industry, let's say, in transportation planning industry, or you know, the collective thought of all the professionals, what, you know, in an urban area, you know, you got to come to the realization that if you want to build things in the acre, you're not going to be having the parking requirements like you would in a suburban area. What you want to do is move more towards a multimodal, encouraging more people to walk, bike, ride the bus.
Yeah.
So we're never going to build our way out of a car-centric society. So in an urban area, what we're trying to do, and you know, Boston's doing this, Cambridge, you know, everybody's trying to do this, is build more bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, transit infrastructure, because we've come to the realization we'll never be able to build enough parking and enough roadways to keep growing, so or redeveloping, as it were. So it is the. So to answer your question specifically, I cannot recite you a statistic. I can just tell you what the the body of work of transportation planning in the field is at this point.
Yeah, okay, sure. No, that's fair. It's not enough history, I guess, to really build up the case. The only other question I have is regarding it's been brought up several times relative to if this doesn't work as a dormitory and allow, what is your comment relative to that? That's come up a few times. It's important from various perspectives here. And what is your position on that?
Well, it's important for all of us to understand that this is being permitted as a dormitory under the definition of a dormitory in the ordinance. And we're not wavering from that. This is going to be available to the college and/or university students. So this is not an apartment building at large, and it's going to be permitted as such as a dormitory. The business decision and the investments that's being made by Mr. Fideli and his team, that's based on their detailed data and analysis. And that being said, they're looking forward to build what is a quality project for the city. So they're not building this with an eye that someday this will fail. And as a matter of fact, one part about this component in the acre is that these university students who are going to be living in this dormitory in quality units would free up additional residential apartments and space throughout the city. We heard the comments from the last comments being made about an apartment building that's inhabited strictly with university students. Well, that's what will happen in neighborhoods that will allow them to rent at this dormitory and free up these neighborhoods for the residents.
If I can supplement what Mr. Theodoro was saying, my name is Howard Levin, by the way. Based upon the analysis that the developer has done here, there are over 7,000 students that are currently living off campus somewhere, somehow. Some of the concerns that have been raised, thank you very much for the comments that were made today. They were very helpful and interesting. Part of the problem is that there are so many students out in the residential community living a lifestyle that is not always compatible with families and so on. This particular project, as our other projects up and down the East Coast have been, is a purpose-built, very carefully designed project for dormitory use. Our leases limit occupancy to one person per bedroom. They're generally designed in suites like a more modern dormitory design. And they're very carefully controlled and supervised through a variety of means, and we can respond to that. I'd like to respond, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Bonsonetto's comments. I just want to supplement one point, and that is in terms of the number of automobiles that we expect. Based upon our own experience with dormitory projects, we would expect somewhere in the 20 to 30% range of students will be bringing cars. This is not intended to be an auto-centric type of development. We're providing amenities. We've chosen the location very, very carefully to encourage people not to bring cars, not to need cars. The location is served very well already by public transit as well as university transit. There will be car sharing facilities built into the garage. They're shown on the plan. There will be extensive bike rack facilities within the building in a safe location for students to park their bikes and go to and from campus. It won't make much sense for people to bring a car just to go to campus.
Doesn't UMass Lowell have that in place now and still have the same problem, though?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what UMass Lowell has in each of their buildings.
We can tell you.
Okay.
Mr. Becky can tell you right there. He used to be one of our city planners. He used to be our assistant city manager. I mean, you're telling us there's no demand. I mean, that they're going to be 20 cars. The university says all it is tells them otherwise. So I don't see what data you're using if the university is present and giving us completely different data. You're saying that there's no need for only 20%, and they're telling you anywhere from 40 to 60% of their students use cars.
Right.
So I don't know what data you have, and you're saying that there's a need for the dorms, and the university is saying there's not a need. So,
Thank you.
Demand thing, yeah.
Thanks for the
Serious
question. This is
question.
Bill Fidelli.
I'm just making a statement. You can sit down, okay? We'll get to you in a minute.
I can answer that question if
Okay,
you like,
we'll
Mr.
get you.
Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sen. So, I mean, what data do you have that's different than the university has? All right, if you want to answer, sir, go ahead. I mean, with the university telling us,
Mr. Fidelli.
who's been in business for a period of time, who has their own standards. We have 2 other dorms that we've approved with different data, and you're saying your data is totally different than what we have and what the university has, which we haven't seen. So go ahead.
So at 193 parking spaces, that's 93 on site and 100 off-site, 50 from the city.
100 off-site, we've only got one letter saying 50 that don't meet the 1,500 radius, and you have another letter that we haven't seen yet, so go ahead.
We submitted the,
The one for the 100 down the street, but for the
I
church?
haven't seen it all.
yes,
See it.
just a quick clarification. There were 2 letters. One is from the city of Lowell for
That's
the
the only
50
one we have.
spaces. The second one was submitted, and that's a memorandum of understanding from the private supplier of parking.
Do you know who you gave it to? I don't have it. Do you have a copy? Okay. I mean, and isn't the AR Street parking garage more than 1,500 square feet away, which are requirements for the site plan, they have to be within 1,500 square feet?
Yes, that's correct. Dimensionally, from where our property...
Doesn't meet the criteria on the site plan. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, from where our property sits, we do not reside within 1,500 feet, linear feet, of a city-owned garage, and we do not reside within 400 feet of a private parking lot. We're roughly 1,600 feet from the city garage, and we're roughly within 600 feet from the private lot, where we have secured more than 50 overflow parking spaces. So at 193 parking spaces, that's roughly 41.5% coverage. You heard Mr. Backey from the university mention that roughly 40% of their students on campus bring cars.
Actually, he said 40 to 60%. He talked about the upperclassmen, he said the low ones were 40%, and the other people there goes anywhere from 40 to 60. So if you want to quote him, I suggest you do it adequately. Go ahead.
Thank you. So that's the math where you're using.
Okay. So what's the data that you have that tells us that you indicated you did this whole study and the university needs the dorm? You said you did extensive data report.
On the demand study, is that your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
So there are 18,000 students going to UMass Lowell, 7,000 are part-time. There's 11,000 full-time students. There's roughly 4,000 beds on campus. That leaves 7,000 students to come off campus to secure a bed on a daily basis. Of those 7,000 students that are full-time, they are living somewhere. If you look at the town gown study that was done by the city and the university, the last one we have a copy of is from 2011, so in and of itself, it is dated. In that study, it concluded that roughly 50 students lived in walking distance to campus that was in a dwelling unit that was not owned by the university. And then it went on to say that an additional 150 students lived within bicycling distance. Now, I think it's fair to assume that there's probably more students that lived in the area, but those were the ones that were identified. That being said, of the 7,000 full-time students that need to find a daily bed, we feel that there's sufficient demand to fill our property. Additionally, of the 7,000 that are part-time students, 32% live at home, leaving 68% to seek a bed outside of their home. It is unclear, there isn't data out there that we can get our hands on that determines where that 68% of the additional 7,000 students reside. I think it's also fair to assume that some of them may live in the city, they're still going to school, they might be working full-time. Our property was selected because of its location. Everybody keeps mentioning the Edge, and I apologize to the developers of the Edge. I really don't want to talk about somebody else's project. However, everybody talks about the Edge. We personally reviewed that opportunity 5 separate times. We personally turned down that opportunity. The reason being is, number one, location. We prefer to be in locations that are pedestrian to the academic core. If you look at, we look, and so does the university, it's on their website, they consider the student center as the hub of their campus. We are roughly a 3-minute walk up Merrimack Street from the hub of their campus. Thus, we look at our property as pedestrian. Our traffic study concluded that residents are going to be more apt to walk, bike, take the shuttle bus than they are to drive a car. That traffic study is part of the responses that we submitted as well.
So do you still think that the kids are gonna use the bikes in the middle of the winter when there's snow on the ground?
I think they're going to walk. I think the first choice
I think they're
is
gonna drive.
walking.
Go ahead. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. Rich, do you have any other question? I'm sorry.
I have no more questions, no.
Thank you.
Chairman. All set.
Mr. Snetsky, if no.
Yes, I have several. The bikes and walking and the whole multimodal theory at this point, as Nick alluded to, is basically theory. And it's the ideal we would all like to see come about, but it's not reality, and it's not yet reality, and I don't know at what point, if at all, it will become reality. That being said, I think that I could be okay with the 193 spaces, which represents about 82.8% of the legal requirement in the code. And I think it's enough of a compromise, coupled with the contribution to the intermodal corridor, that I could see my way clear to support that. But I would want to see, as a condition of any approval, both the agreement for the contribution to the multimodal corridor, and before permitting were to take place, contracts and executed purchase or leasing of the spaces, not just having them hanging out there in abeyance. I would want to see that.
We would certainly make it any vote conditioned upon obtaining a lease for the additional spaces.
Because without that, the, shall I say, the encouragement or the incentive for your development to encourage the students that do have vehicles to use that space, if you haven't already committed funds to it, then therefore, there's not going to be any real incentive for you to promote that. So I would say if that were the case, I could support that aspect of it. In regarding the use, if the dorm were not filled, you've stated before, and as a condition of the permit, it would be in fact permitted as only as a dormitory and would have to meet the requirements of, I believe it's section 7.8. So I'm okay with that aspect. I do question the comment that was made that, you would possibly relieve some of the private housing crunch in the area. Might I ask, what the lease rate is for this versus, say, a typical shared apartment that a student, might rent in the neighborhood, just for a point of reference?
Well, I don't have any of those survey numbers or anything handy, but I believe I was commenting generally as this private dormitory, which will be a quality student housing, provides an additional choices for students attending the university to lease and to live at this dormitory space, and rather than living in other neighborhoods in the city closer to the university, and at the same time, by doing that, would have a likelihood effect of you know, opening up those units to other residents for housing.
Yeah, my concern there would be, you know, and I don't know the cost structure of your property, if you know, I mean, if you wish to speak to it or not, you know, that's up to you. But, you know, if the rent for your property were to significantly exceed what a student's, you know, sharing, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 students sharing an apartment, which obviously is not always the ideal situation, but, you know, economics do come into play here, you know, as to whether or not they would make that choice. The last thing that I want to address, and it's something that we had spoken about at length at the last meeting, is, you know, the requirements for security and on-site management. And the code of the City of Lowell, Section 7.8, regarding, you know, privately developed, you know, dormitories, it is what exists at this point in time. And it's our responsibility to administer that. We do have some latitude. I just feel it's a little presumptuous of the developer to come in and say to us, your code is obsolete and we've got a better way. Well, maybe you do, and maybe the code needs to be looked at. And the city can do that at some point in time, and, you know, perhaps, you know, the developer could even, you know, testify and assist the city in doing that. But what exists right now is what we have to work with, and that's somewhat the benchmark. Again, that being said, I think we could probably compromise some. At a very minimum, I would not be willing to support anything less than a dedicated security manager on a 24/7 basis, security officer, whatever you want to call them. And that's supplemented by trained RAs. We could probably discuss what that ratio needs to be, whether we must live with the 50, or you could propose something that you think you could live with. But I think that's an issue that has to be addressed before, you know, we can move forward here. So those are the particular issues that I have.
And we've addressed these in the responses, and I'd like to have Mr. Levin address that for you.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sinetsky, thank you very much. There's a grid we put together in the letter, or the memo, I should say, that was included in the package, the response package that everyone has. In essence, what we're trying to do, we're not saying that one system is inferior or better than another. What we're trying to say is that we work together with a dedicated student housing management company called Aspen Heights, and we provide a somewhat different model where we provide different ratios of different people. There is 24/7 security. There's actually 24/7 security and backup security. The reason for having fewer RAs is because we provide more people in other categories that are managing and are constantly present on site. We also vary the amount of coverage we have based upon time of day and day of the week because of the nature of student activities. Aspen Heights manages over 40 other purpose-built student housing developments across the country. They, along with Mr. Fideli's organization, have a tremendous amount of experience with these particular projects. Also, a project of this nature that is purpose-built and designed has built within it a number of security factors, the inner courtyards, plus the fact that because it is privately owned housing that is supported by private investment, there's a lot more attention in some respects paid, certainly compared to the dormitory that I used to live in at UMass years ago, to making sure the building is not damaged, making sure that it's a safe environment for everyone. And we can go through that in a great deal of detail if you would like me to go in more detail.
Well, I believe I'm looking at the page to which you refer, and you're referring to a staff-to-student ratio that you state to be, a staff member per 47 students. And that is true by your definition of a staff member. But the general manager, the assistant general manager, the revenue service manager, the marketing assistants, the maintenance supervisor, the maintenance techs, those are not RAs, in my opinion. You may differ with that opinion, and I know you have experience.
They're not RAs.
But they are not, in my opinion, dedicated to the servicing of student security issues, and necessarily trained as such. I could see, as I stated initially, I could see working out some kind of a compromise in terms of that ratio, but I don't agree with your definition of a 1:47 ratio based on the personnel which you've delineated here, my opinion.
Well, in addition to that, we also use student interns and other professionally trained people. There is some of the staff are security oriented. Some of the staff are student mentors in some way. There is programming for the students. There are activities within the building ongoing. There are plenty of places for students to seek out help and to be aware, people who are aware of what is going on within these buildings. Those are the functions that an RA may or may not perform depending upon their level of activity within a typical dormitory setting. These are trained professionals, and this is what they do, and every one of them has a backup person to the extent they are unavailable at any particular point in time. There's a communication system that is operational 24/7. People can come to the building if there's any need to, but there's always a staff presence in the building.
In my opinion, a staff presence versus a trained RA, I don't see where necessarily a maintenance supervisor or maintenance technician meets that definition that we're talking about here.
I understand, and maintenance technician is not really what I had in mind when I said that. We're not
That's what
suggesting.
stated, in the memo to which you referred and your response, to which you referred. That's all I have to go on here. And in reviewing it, those were the issues I had with that. Again, I think there can be some middle ground here, but as it's currently stated, I have an issue with it.
I understand, and part of what we're trying to say is there's a very high level of staff presence, and to the extent that there's a staff person who is not equipped to deal with a particular situation, there are other staff people that can step in. But the fact that there is that staff presence allows that information to be communicated, and communicated very promptly.
I respectfully disagree, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Snetsky. Mr. Malovich, any questions?
I'm going to reiterate just about everything that Mr. Snetsky has said. I agree with his discussion on parking. I agree on the dorm versus rental housing for students. I think it's an economic issue, and it's apples and oranges. You can't tell me that a student at a working class university, as this university has been for many years, where people are rubbing nickels and dimes together to make sure they can get an education, that they're going to go for the Cadillac place to live versus something that may be half the price. So I think that whole discussion is a little bit insecure for me. I don't believe there's a correlation of emptying out a bunch of apartments because this building is going to be built. I don't believe that. And section 7.8. I still have a problem with, this thing was developed by the city and the university, based on the university's operation about students. And I think it's well-founded. And the language says it must provide, at a minimum, these items, at a minimum. The planning board must, for a site plan, site plan review, should review and approve and shall, at a minimum, include the following, at a minimum. So I don't think, I for one don't want to relinquish anything of this until someone has the wherewithal to revisit this and develop a new set of guidelines, maybe, you know, going into the future of how we, you guys, you people operate your buildings. I don't disagree that maybe there's, you know, time has gone by and there are better ways to do things. But at a minimum, this is what we, I don't feel comfortable waiving anything or substituting anything. I think this is at a minimum. So that's where I'm coming from. That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Malovich.
Chairman.
Mr. Fischett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to really build on what Mr. Malovich said, and Mr. Sinetsky as well, on section point 7.8, and you know, a lot of thought went into this when it was first enacted, and really considered that a minimal standard. And we did get clarification from the law department as well, because the applicant's reluctance, I think at the last meeting, was that there might be some privacy issues with reporting incidences to the university. And I'm assuming the applicant received a copy of the decision from the law department.
Yes, that's correct.
You agree with this at this point?
We in our comments back, we did state that we would have an on-site staff member designated as both a liaison to the UMass Lowell and the city police, so that
with the idea that
of communicating
the
incidences, yes.
And then the clarification on your response, and I thought it was interesting, because I did read through this, and I did read your lease agreement, and I thought it was interesting. Section 18 of your lease agreement, no reliance on security system devices or measures internet access cable. And in one section it says, landlord at its sole option may elect to install certain security devices or measures that are not required by law. These devices are not monitored on a 24-hour basis and are not designed to provide personal security services. I don't know, I being represented that the technology is in some way supplementing having 24-hour security, and you specifically out of your way saying, look, at this technology is not reviewed on monitored on a 24-hour basis, nor is it to provide personal security. So I found that a little curious at best. Also, I agree with my colleagues regarding the ratios, and again, it gets back to 7.8. I think from my position, and it would appear, at least from the members that have spoken, that at a minimum you must fully comply with that section. And I'm somewhat, even when with your response on your security, with a 24/7 security presence provided by a combination of full-time employees on site and electronic access control provided through the property. This will be a limited access community with apartment doors, amenity access points, equipment, traceable electronic locked doors, And it says IP-based cameras shall install in high-traffic areas. But then I read the lease agreement, and I'm not quite sure what reliance is being provided on that. So obviously, I think in reviewing it, that at the very least, and even the university has indicated that what we have on our books is really of a minimal standard, and that's really what we would want to see. I certainly would want to see as being fully complied with. Regarding the parking, you know, we deal with, and we have dealt with over the years, a lot of reuse of existing structures, mill buildings. And, you know, we have a large building, it's already built. What are we going to do with it? And I can't recall in the history of this board saying you have to tear down the building. We're not going to allow you to do anything with it. So typically there's some relief provided for lot area per dwelling unit. In some instances there's some parking that's looked at. But again, it's an existing building. We're starting with basically a clean slate. We're building a new structure. We have in our zoning ordinance the requirement that we have, the expectation that we have, in order to have a responsible development. And for us to look at this with a clean slate, new construction, and to allow for the, whatever you want to call it, waivers or of the requirements, I mean, I think even the applicant has admitted that much of the parking that's been provided off-site does not meet our requirements. It doesn't meet the distance requirements, and it just doesn't. So I think I have some real issues with that. And the reality of it is, in council, I looked, and maybe I missed it, were there floor plans? Are there going to be kitchens in all of these units?
Yes, each unit will have a kitchen.
Okay. So this is my concern. And you've agreed, and it's before us for special permit, and we can put the deed restriction on there so that if it's to be sold to a nonprofit or the school, whatever, they have to agree to pay a fee in lieu of taxes. If this fails as a dormitory, and nobody enters into a project, Council, you know I'm a banker, right? Nobody enters into a project with the idea that it's going to fail, okay? Everybody does their analysis, everybody does their debt service coverage ratios, everybody figures in a certain amount of vacancy rate, and everybody goes forward, okay? The investors go forward, the lenders go forward, the developer goes forward. In an instance where it does not succeed, if I'm a financer, first phone call I want to make is the university. You want to buy some dormitories? Okay. Probably not going to want to buy it because we're going to have a deed restriction on there. Okay. So they have kitchens, they have the bedrooms. The other alternative is housing, market housing. We don't even meet the minimum standard for the dormitory parking. What are we going to do? And again, we do this with the mill buildings, with the reuse of the mill buildings. They're here. We're certainly not going to say to a developer, tear it down. And this was my concern when we first adopted the dormitory ordinance on the books. This was my biggest concern. And I think the chairman can recall on Marginal Street, they had some real issues with what would happen if that didn't succeed. And because there was some certain approvals that were needed in order to make that work. And the concern is because reality is we approve it, you're applying for it as a dormitory, and I concede that, and it's not under any guise that it's going to be a mixed, you're applying for dormitories. But if it does not succeed, we have this building that's already built, and even though we made it a condition, whether I'm sitting here or somebody else is sitting here, I can tell you right now, they're not going to tell the applicant to tear the building down because it doesn't have sufficient parking. Now we're going to be in a position we're going to have to try to deal with this. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for the neighborhood. It's not going to be easy for the owners of the building. It's going to be a challenge. So, I look at the use, and I look at the parking graph that you've found, and Nick, I mean, you've even commented on past projects where we've used national standards and we've used, well, if you have local knowledge, doesn't that take precedence? Doesn't that trump over that? If you have local knowledge.
Yes, I think every project's unique.
Correct. Right. So, I mean, we sit here this evening and we have local knowledge, and we've done this with projects with the CBA has gone forward, and we had some questions about the parking demand, and they have enough housing. We've asked them, look, can you provide an analysis of what the parking demands are for the type of profile of resident that you have? And it supported our decision, and it's worked. We have local knowledge. We have local knowledge of what's happening at that university right now with reference to parking demand. And as it sits, based on what you're providing to us this evening, the off-site parking does not meet the requirement, and therefore the parking that you have does not meet the requirement of the dormitory use, let alone any other use if it fails as a dorm. This is such a key site, and it is such a key project. And to have these types of issues looming over it, and to expect that we can go forward on that, I think is very difficult to ask this board to do that. Now, I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues, but I think we've made it clear, for the most part, we've had issues with these things. So from my perspective, and you did come to us for a pre-application hearing. I think we talked about some of the issues. At the last meeting, we still talked at great length about the issues, and we're sitting here this evening, and we basically still have the same issues that exist. And let alone getting into retail space and how it should look on Merrimack Street and how it should look on Market Street. I think for myself personally, I can't even get past these issues that have been cited here so far this evening. So from my perspective, I just think if we're building a brand new building and we have zoning requirements, why would we want to go forward with that if we can't meet the zoning requirements? So that's all my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Mr. Boyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a fortunate place for me to pick up. Could one of you please walk me through your facade plan? Walk me through where your entrances are. Let's start on Merrimack Street.
Bob, you want to do that?
Bob, could you put the site plan up?
On Merrimack Street, and good evening, everybody. Merrimack Street, at the center of the building, at the glass area there, that would be our main student entrance to the elevators, upper floors. Also with connection to the ground floor amenity space, which would be to the right of that, on the ground floor. At the corner at Merrimack would be also where the leasing office would be located, a main student hub there. That would be the main corner. And
So doors and entrances. Along the Merrimack Street, this front, how long is that?
I'm sorry?
What's that dimension along your frontage along Merrimack Street?
I believe it's 262 feet.
262 feet. And what do we have for doors in that 262 feet? We have the one on the corner of...
That's correct.
Of Cabot.
Cabot, yes. That would be...
You have one other going into your amenity space?
There'd be one into the main vestibule, which connects to the elevators for students to go upstairs.
Yep.
And there'd be additional ones for any future retail space on that, past that as well.
Okay, well, what is your plan for that future retail space? How many entrances are you providing for on Merrimack Street?
It would be depending on the decisions to go forward. Right now, we have one retail space there with a set of double doors.
Okay, so along the 200 and something feet of Merrimack Street, you have one entrance. And a second entrance there at the corner, one for the retail, one for the residential. Then we go along Cabot Street.
Also, just to clarify, there's also the entrance to the garage, which does have its own exit as well, and a stair at the corner at the farthest part of the building, which also does have an exit as well.
That is an exit.
It's
Okay. Okay,
staircase.
so are those both that you just mentioned, are those both exits or are either of them entrances?
They would have controlled access.
They would have controlled access.
Typically, we'd have students go through the main vestibule.
You want, right. You want students to go through the main vestibule, so those should be exits.
Correct.
Okay, so now we turn the corner onto Cabot Street. We've got that one on the corner, your main entrance. Looks like there's a door at the foot of a stairwell on Cabot Street.
That's correct.
Right across the street from Decatur Way, it looks like it's very central. Is that an entrance?
Also an exit from a stair.
Also an exit. And then no more doors until you get to the corner of Market, correct?
There's also, at the same location, there's another exit from the garage, but that's correct.
Another entrance from the garage, an exit from the garage. Okay, and then going down Market Street, it looks to me like you have one roll-up door, and you have, well, you walk me through it. What do you have for entrances, exits into the building facing Market Street?
Yeah, due to the site grade, as you can see, it does slope up towards Cabot there.
Mhm.
So as we get down from the slope, we'd have the trash facility. It does have a roll-up door
Trash
with
facility,
access.
an exit for a dumpster.
Correct. And access to the parking garage there as well.
Okay, and is that an entrance?
Again, it would have controlled access, so it could be.
I keep asking this question. Are these entrances, or are these just exits?
I think for the security of the building, the intent is to keep students secure.
That's exactly the point I was going to bring up, Mr. Boyle, is that what Steve is trying to say is it's important to have a handle on who is entering and exiting your building at all times. And trying to promote pedestrian access on Merrimack Street is the way that this building and the site was designed. And so ingress and egress into the building just on Merrimack Street, you have 1, 2, 3, not counting the garage entrance. If you were to go into the garage entrance, let's say you walked into the garage entrance, you could then enter the building from the garage in multiple locations. So those are your entrances, and that's the way we want to promote access to the building. But then exits, so some of the entrances are also exits. There's roughly, 9 exits on the building. Every stairwell has an exit. There are various other exits in specifically located places. On the backside on Market Street, there's entrance and exit. But again, we want to make sure, this gets back to the safety and security of the building. We want, on the loading zone, periodically, there will be deliveries. And if we utilize that loading zone, you can enter the building through the garage from the loading zone. But the vast majority of the traffic is going to be through Merrimack Street, because that's where our RAs, our staff members, our consultants are going to be the majority of the time. Now, I'm going on to a tangent, and that is on the property management. Our property management, we are not employing RAs, we're not employing property staff members to just sit in the leasing office. Even though we do have technology, we do have secured access, we do have security cameras, their job is to not only walk around the building, to walk the exterior of the building, to make themselves known in the community. In order for this to be a successful project, our property manager, who will be a mature, experienced professional, will be known in the community. They will be known to the Action Acre, they will be known to the CBA. They will be known to the university. They will be known to the city. At all of our other projects, at all the projects that Aspen Heights manages, there's a direct line of communication to the city, especially police, fire, whomever. And so I don't anticipate this project being any different. So a long-winded way, but I hope I answered your question.
Okay, well, I don't think anybody can question your commitment to securing your building from the outside. Thank you. So, I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it to the last meeting, because I had some thoughts that I think it would have been helpful to bring them up earlier in the process. First of all, I want to talk about this building's context. This building is located near the end of what we call the Upper Merrimack Street Commercial District. It spills over a little onto the Market Street side and also extends a bit onto Cabot Street there. It's what I would characterize as a fairly successful neighborhood commercial district. It certainly has come a long ways in the last decade, in the last couple of decades, and it's an area that is very much on its way up, not on its way down. The applicant here describes the presence of his building and the project, Mr. Chairman, as providing a much-needed boost to the commercial area. Obviously, additional customers, additional foot traffic would be welcome in any commercial area. But I do take exception to what seems to be the assumption that this is a troubled, boarded-up type of commercial district, which is in much need of a boost. This area is full of businesses. It's full of successful businesses that pay their rent, and buildings that pay their taxes, and buildings that get improved. They provide jobs for neighborhood residents and for people from outside the neighborhood who are making good money off of locating in that neighborhood. They provide goods and services that the people in that neighborhood spend their money on and find useful and take advantage of. So when we're talking about this building and its effects, let's keep in mind that there is something there that is worthwhile. There's something there that's positive, that isn't just sitting, crumbling, and waiting to be rescued by a developer swooping in. There is a neighborhood which is already its own neighborhood, commercial, retail ecosystem, which is working. And so as we go forward, sure, we should think about how a project could benefit it, but I think we should also think about, we don't want to damage it because it's something that's working. The other element of the context of this building is on the other side, on the Market Street side, the corner of Market and Cabot, facing up into Salem Street. The first time the applicant was before us, when we were at the conceptual stage, I brought up, actually the question I asked was, could you provide some uses on the first floor there that would benefit the neighborhood? And Mr. Chairman, the answer I got from the applicant was, I'm running a for-profit business and it needs to make economic sense. Well, I wasn't asking for a welfare clinic. I was asking for more commercial space in which the residents of this neighborhood and the people who serve the residents of this neighborhood could provide more successful, vibrant businesses in which they could work, in which they could shop, and which would contribute to their neighborhood. And I asked for commercial at that. Other members of the board brought up the issue of commercial space at that meeting. And then I watched the previous meeting, and members of this board brought up the issue of commercial space, on Market Street as well. I know Jerry did, and I believe I remember it coming up from other members too. And here we are. Right across the street from Market Street, across Market Street from this project is North Common Village. And we've all been asking if the people in North Common Village are going to get some nice storefronts across the street from them that they can use, or at least that they look at, or at least that they walk past, and they're the places that are in their neighborhood that they know. And is that what the people in North Common Village got? The hell it is. They got security cameras. I hope that everybody here understands it's a very carefully designed project. I hope that everybody here understands what's going on with the very careful design of this project. He wants all the access to come through one security checkpoint. This is Fort Apache. This is a forward operating base in Afghanistan, and my fellow Lowellians living in this part of the acre are the Afghans. I've been opposed to projects before. I've never been offended by a project like this before. 382 feet of uninterrupted steel security is what the people in North Common Village are going to have built across the street from them. Then we turn the corner and we get another 170 feet of steel security. And that's what this monolith is showing to the neighborhood, is showing to that side of the neighborhood. Well, when I think about that, is that this building, as it is presented here, is not fit to sit across the street from one of those 20th century low-income public housing projects. I will not be voting for a special permit for this project. And that's before we get into these questions about housing demand and about parking. This is very nearly an act of aggression against the residents of the neighborhood. And I think the purpose of planning boards reviewing projects is to stop things like this. Thank God we haven't had our city built like this so far. Let's not start. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Okay. The only comments I'm going to comment on is basically what the other board members are, and I'm just going to start with the basic requirements that we want in the 7.8, and the applicant is requesting that we waive basically all of 7.8, which I'm not going to do, which is the 24/7 on-site security, not required given security features and design as they indicated. One student resident, they want for 125 instead of 150. Reporting infraction in UMass Lowell may violate privacy laws. A law department tells us otherwise. Transportation demand management plan is not needed for transportation-oriented development because they're going to rely on the existing public and UMass Lowell transit. Well, that's one of our questions that we requested. So in regards to the site plan review, they want those 4 waivers, and as indicated by a lot of people who spoke tonight, people who spoke from the university, and letters that we received, and spoke from my other boards, at minimum, we should employ these on our site plan. It's a brand new project, and they want us to waive all the minimum basic site plan review before we're doing. Now, going from there, the other question would be the parking. I don't feel the parking is adequate. Speaking from what the neighbors had to say, I disagree with the applicant on the number of parking spaces. They talked about, they wanted 93. They come up with 466 beds, and they need 233 parking spaces. That's not including any commercial businesses on the first floor. So therefore, I think myself, if they can't meet the basic requirement of the site plan approval and ask for all those waivers, then I have a problem with the site plan under the request for the waivers, and I also have a problem with the request for the parking. And then for the parking, they're telling us they're gonna park more than 1,500 feet away, which is outside the request of our site plan to begin with. So they're basically saying, we want you to waive everything under your site plan and approve the project. But I'm not voting for any waivers, and I'm not voting for a special permit. What's the request of the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just for a moment just...
No, thank you.
Excuse me?
Statement, no.
Could I request, we're requesting it's understood that there's a number of faults in the application and in the plan that have to be addressed, and we leave it up to the discretion of the chairman and of course respectfully to the board to allow us to have a continuance on this, to redesign and to reformulate a plan that will be acceptable for the minimum standards, and to be able to place something, a quality project before the board that could obtain your approval.
The board want to comment and request for continuance?
Mr. Chairman, the issues, at least the ones that I spoke about tonight, I don't think that these are things that can be properly addressed through the modification of this plan. I think that the design and the conceptual, the basic concept behind this is fundamentally flawed as to be located in this neighborhood, and I think that to build something that is fit to sit in this neighborhood requires going all the way back to the beginning, not amending a project as submitted.
Any of the board members have any comments on that? Or the only other question would be, if it's going to come back with a whole new plan, would it be proper to withdraw, then come back with a new plan? Because then if you're gonna come up with a new plan, we'll almost have to start all over again and publicize all over again.
Right.
Because it's not gonna be a continuation, it's gonna be a different
it's either up or
layout.
down.
So it's, really, when you're gonna do your advertisement, come in and say you're gonna advertise for all this and this and this. it's gonna be different.
Could we take a moment to discuss this, to have just a 5-minute recess?
Sure, you can do that, and we will move along with the agenda. Okay, there's other people who have to be heard, and I'm not gonna keep them here all night as well. So we'll adjourn this matter, and we'll go right to the next matter, and we'll call you back to the table. Is that acceptable to all parties, board members?
Yeah, that's good,
Okay,
Tom.
5-minute recess on that. Meanwhile, we'll try to entertain the next applicant who's been sitting patiently. Okay, let me get my paperwork up. I believe we have a zoning request.
Only street, yeah. Oh. Right.
Who do we have for the rezoning petition? Mr. Geary, you for that? Yes, I am. Okay, thank you, sir. You, take it you're ready, you've been waiting patiently. Okay, so rezone petition, 25 Only Street. The public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to proposed zoning amendment to extend the existing light industrial zoning district to include the area of the above address. The subject property is presently zoned traditional mixed-use zoning. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Attorney Stephen Geary, and I represent Mr. Kevin Fernandez and his wife in their petition for rezoning of 25 Olney Street. This, just procedurally, as you know from what we handed in, this property went out for request for proposal from the city of Lowell. They've owned it since 1994, I believe, as a result of a tax taking. When it went out for bid, my client was, I believe, the only bidder, and I believe he bid over the asking price. So he received this property, entered into a purchase and sale agreement with a contingency that this be rezoned, that parcel, to bring the light industry down from the TMU zone in that little area of Olney Street. I'm sure that you've gone by there or you're familiar with it, but it's in an area right around the corner from my client's business, which is Mario's Furniture. It's been a business in the city of Lowell for over 40 years and been on that location on Gorham Street for about half of that time. The purpose of my client wanting to acquire this property is so he could get his trucks off the road or off the site on Gorham Street. This is literally right around the corner from there and right next to another garage. And if you've seen this lot, it's a kind of like a little small parcel of wasteland. It's overgrown. There's a lot of furniture and garbage has just been strewn all around there for quite a while. It's a benefit to that area because my client is going to redevelop it as a 2-bay garage that's going to take the trucks off his parcel on Gorham Street and put them into this parcel for 2 reasons. First of all, it gets them out of the weather. Second of all, they need additional storage. And as a third issue, people have been stealing the diesel from the truck, so he'd like to secure them. So that's a big thing these days. So they're concerned about that. So when they had the opportunity to acquire this property through the RFP, they thought it would be a perfect complement to their business and a complement to that area. I believe there's only one residential area that is there at all, a 2-family, and what my client plans on doing in this 2-bay garage on I think the parcel is 3,090 square feet, and the proposed building is going to be 30 feet long and 50 feet wide, all concrete to be able to withstand the forklift that they need in that area, and the trucks will be parked inside this garage, one behind the other or one next to the other. The exterior of the lot is going to, or the exterior of the building is going to be, have a more residential look than the other garage bay that he has on his property on Gorham Street for Mario. So it's going to fit in nicely with that neighborhood. It'll probably be the same color as the Mario's color, which is that tan, and it would be the siding on the side with the bay doors. And this deal is contingent, the purchase and sale he has is contingent upon the rezoning. So it was referred to this board from the city council for your recommendation. So be happy to answer any questions, and at the end, I'll be asking for your recommendation, favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Council. Anybody here this evening want to speak in favor of this project? Anybody in favor? In favor? In favor? Anybody in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? What's the request of the board members have any questions or comments for Mr. Gary?
Mr. Chairman, I just note that we did receive correspondence, as we normally would, from the solicitor's office indicating that this would not be spot zoning and that, you know, we have every right to consider this in making a positive recommendation. Certainly in visiting the site, even what is, other than the building that's right on Gorham Street, the businesses and the use that's in there is light industry, and it seems to fit, you know, it'll fit right in with the other. And I, you know, always when we get these recommendations, or when we provide these recommendations to the city council, it always gets blurred. Council, as you know, is you start talking about the specifics, and we're not really here to talk, to really decide on that. But whether or not is it appropriate to move basically the light industry zone to that site, and from my standpoint, I think that would certainly be logical. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any board members have any further questions? No?
I have a,
I'm sorry.
yes, I wanted to comment on this, that going even further than the law office's observation that this isn't spot zoning, this is actually very consistent with the principles that are laid out in our zoning and in our comprehensive master plan about how we're supposed to take care of the zoning map. If you notice the way that the zoning was done, you have buildings that front on Gorham Street are under one zone, and then what's behind them and what's fronting on Dick Street are in another zone. And the line is drawn along the backs, as opposed to what some towns do, draw it down the middle of the street, and you have inhabitable uses across from each other. This maintains that line right across the back. Shifting that line on either side of this particular parcel still keeps it, you know, one of those mid-block zoning lines. So this is actually one of the easiest decisions we've been asked to make.
Anybody else? Dick, you have any questions?
No, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I think it's a good fit for the neighborhood, and you know, ultimately it'll be good for the business and the city.
Always good to see a person who runs a business in the city wants to keep it in the city and expand.
Yeah, and expand.
Right, and they run a very,
right behind his own property.
Yeah.
they run a great business, and the I guess ancillary benefit to this is it's gonna take a piece of property that has not been on the tax rolls. It's gonna invest about $100,000 into it. It's gonna be on the tax rolls, and they're gonna keep this property up just like the other property that they have. It's gonna enhance that whole neighborhood, and I think the neighbors are actually looking
I think
forward
it's
to it.
his truck's off the street for safety and
Yeah,
vandalism.
no, it's really literally a win-win, so it's good.
Do you know if you have a date when you go back before the city council yet? Did they give you one of those yet? Or Christine, would you know that? Next Tuesday.
Move it right along, yeah.
Hey, next Tuesday.
I guess what I know what I'm doing next Tuesday. Just found out.
Good thing Christine answered then.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, what's the request of the planning board for the recommendation to the city council? Do we want to
Mr.
recommend?
Chairman,
in
I'll
favor?
make a recommendation for approval of the rezoning,
Motion.
expansion of the light industrial.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Malovich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. The recommendation is approved to go before the council. So anybody who's watching, this will be on the city council's agenda next Tuesday night.
Hey,
Good luck,
thank you,
Councilman.
gentlemen. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a no. Oh, that's Walker Street, that's. Okay.
Okay, we're back on the record for the Market Merrimack Street. Council?
Mr. Chairman, once again, I respectfully request a continuance of this matter. A great deal of time has been spent on this project going back from February, not just on our part, but on the part of the staff, of DPD, and the benefit of their input here. Obviously, tonight, we understand that there are issues that have to be resolved, major issues that have to be resolved, and we feel that if we place the effort in this project here and not let it go right now, and the issues with respect to parking, 7.8, and a substantial redesign of the Market and Cabot Street corner over there to address the concerns, to show that this project would have, to be a benefit to the community, and to offer something to the community on that side of the street as well. It'll take significant effort on our part, but it's not something that we will take up the work immediately and come back to you, and hopefully at that time bring back something here that this board can consider and vote on. So we really, at this point of time, given the amount of time that's been placed on working this, and as I said before, not just on our part, but the input and the work that's been done with staff, where we've had meetings that go back from February on this. So it's something where we respectfully request the board to consider, and the chairman to consider, to ask that you grant our request for a continuance in this, so that we can go ahead and implement the major changes that you're looking for, and to bring it to you for vote at that time.
And the board members want to be heard on that? I mean, basically, this has been our third meeting, and the pocket numbers stay the same after we hear from all the applicants. I mean, from the applicant and all the neighbors. Nothing's changed from the last meeting, and nothing changed from the preamble. But any of the board members have a comment, whether they want to go forward and vote tonight, or do you want to give them a continuance?
It seems to me that the scope of changes we're talking about are so extensive that they're not going to be back here for the August meeting. I mean, a continuance, how much of a continuance are we talking about? And if we're talking about a couple of months worth of continuance, that sounds an awful lot like starting over.
Well, at least if we had a couple of months for a continuance, we could have a significant period of time to work on this to get it back, and to bring you something that would save us. It would save us a significant amount of time from all the time that's invested in this project already. And also, we already have the benefit of the input from staff, so we ask that we allow to move forward on that, to give us the opportunity to do that.
Go ahead, Mr. Shedd.
Council, now, are you looking to provide adequate parking on site? And, to Mr. Boyle's comment about the redesigning of the building, and it was interesting when Mr. Boyle was commenting, because I certainly was thinking about the comments from, was it Maxine, regarding the eyes on the street, and the way the building is designed, the eyes are not on the street. And I think if we're looking at really the type of redesign to achieve that, the parking, you're going to need a transportation management plan, whether you agree with that or not. I mean, you're going to need it. You might as well resign to that fact. That building does not meet the requirements that is set forth in 7.8. My feeling is that that requires really a new posting, a new public hearing. I think it probably might be more appropriate is requesting the withdrawal of the application and then resubmit really a new design. And that would be my thoughts on that.
Okay. Rich, any comments on the continuance?
Yeah, I would agree with Jerry's assessment relative to a withdrawal and then a redesign. There's just too many things here that are up in the air that need to be addressed. And we haven't got the answers so far. I don't see the need for continuance, really.
Dick, any comments on that?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues on that, and if that's what the will of the body is here, I could support that.
Bob, any
I
questions?
agree. I agree with my fellow.
So let's put it this way. Let's see, is there a question that we continue the matter? Well, let's have one,
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we continue the matter until the August meeting.
I don't know if they
Could we continue it for, I'm sorry.
No.
I was
what
just
would you like?
thinking that the August meeting is 1 month, would not be enough time for us,
So what would you like?
the September meeting.
Okay, I'll amend my motion. I'm going to make a motion that we continue this public hearing until the September meeting.
Do we have a motion, there's a motion to continue it? We have 2 meetings in September.
Okay. Let's
What's the
give them
second?
all the time till the second September meeting.
Okay, there's a motion made to continue to that date. Does anybody want to second that motion? Any second? No, no second, so that motion dies.
I'm going to make another motion. Prior to doing so, the exact shape of the motion depends on what the applicant's representative says next.
Okay, so why don't we do it this way?
Given that we cannot continue the meeting out through September, at this time, we would like to formally withdraw the application.
I make a motion that the applicant be allowed to withdraw the application without prejudice.
Okay, what's the discussion of the board on that? Do you want to have them withdraw, or do you want to vote on the project tonight? The board members want to be heard on that, or we can just go with the motion? Or do you want to do discussion? Any discussion on that, or just take it as the vote? Anybody have any comments? Okay, so motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Bull, you made the motion to allow the applicant to withdraw?
I made the motion.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Boyle made the motion to withdraw. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Malovich seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. The motion is allowed to withdraw the site plan approval and a special permit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you all for the residents coming down and speaking tonight. I know it's been a couple of long evenings from last in June and again tonight, but your input's very important to us. Thank you very much. And thank you to the university as well. And Adam, it's always a pleasure to see you again.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Moving along on the agenda, do we have any further comments from any of the board members? Mr. Fischett, do you have anything with them, Cog, or?
No, I have no updates at this juncture, Mr. Chairman. We actually had a meeting this evening, so I could not attend.
You know, I saw that published yesterday in the paper, but didn't mention our meeting, so I figured you'd be there. Anything, Rich, with the historic board?
Pretty quiet. We're going to meet again on August 14th.
Okay. Okay. If not, do we have that should conclude our agenda tonight. Do we have a
I will make a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Mr.
Second.
Boyle? Second by Ms. Fischett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. We are adjourned, and good night, everyone. Thank you. And thank you to Nick, and thank you to Christine. Thank you very much.
Hey, Nick.